welcome. In this video, I'm going to talk a lot about fruit and why fruit is so good for you, some of the health benefits of eating a high fruit diet, and I'm going to talk a bit about sugar and fats and oils and how it's really bad to eat them both in the same meal and how that can cause a lot of disease. But if you separate them in your meals, it can create weight loss, health, and can be really good for so many different conditions. So let's get into this. It's going to be fun. Let's talk about fruit. So, fruit is really, really, really amazingly good for you. They say a lot of the studies show that diets containing high amounts of fruit lower your risks of all different types of cardiovascular diseases. Cancer lowers your risk of cancer. It can contribute to weight loss, weight management, and so much more. And why is this? What's so special about fruit? There's many things. There's many things. It's very good fiber. Tons of fiber in fruit. Tons of vitamins, minerals, fiber, right? Tons of water, really purified water. And of course, like prana or chi, it's very high in energy. It's a sattvic diet. It's high in prana, high in chi. It's very alive, right? It's raw fruit. Raw fruit is very, very high in energy. So energy is good for you. And it's very high in sugar too. But there's a lot of new studies coming out that suggest that sugar is actually very, very good for you. And I'm going to get into that a little bit too. So the new studies show that sugar is actually very good for you. Even though sugar right now in the world, sugar is probably one of the most demonized things in the world right now. And I've been there. I've been on many low carb, low sugar diets for years and years and years. And, I always blame sugar for all the problems in the health world in this day and age. I've been in that camp many times. But the issue is with sugar, you don't want to mix high carb, high sugar with high fat or high protein, mostly high fat or high oil. So you have fats and oils and you have carbs and sugars. They're essentially two worlds of fuel for the body, two types of fuel. They're very, very different types of fuel. So the body prefers mostly one or mostly the other within one meal. But if you mix the two of them in one meal, what do you get? Disease, all sorts of disease. So the studies show that there's been a few studies now that show that if you say have a very high sugar, high carb diet, but low oil over several months, type 2 diabetes can reduce to being almost non-existent from a high carb, high sugar diet. And that's what the new studies are showing. And it's really, really interesting. The issue, what creates insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, or one of the main things, is when you mix these two main fuel sources together. So if you have 2 apples and that's your snack or that's your meal, you'll have insulin spike, very high insulin spike, but shortly after, a few minutes, 10-20 minutes later, it'll go down again and it'll be at very baseline healthy level. There's nothing wrong with insulin spikes. I know you're going to say that there is. Of course there is, but there isn't. It's that the insulin spike comes right back down again very quickly and to a baseline. The issue is when the spike stays up and it stays up for elevated long periods. And that happens when you have high fat and high carb in the same meal. The insulin spike goes up and it stays up for the duration of you digesting the food, like for a couple hours, which it just throws all your body out of whack. And it's one of the things that can actually create diabetes. It can create low thyroid function. It can mess up your liver, all sorts of things. Create obesity, cancer, heart disease. So it's very interesting. You just don't mix these two fuels. Imagine it's like a car and you have a diesel engine and a car with a regular engine. Would you put diesel and regular fuel in a diesel car, like both the fuels at the same time? No, not cool. Or a regular car, regular engine, would you put diesel and regular gasoline at the same time? No, you just put one type of gasoline, one type of fuel. Don't mix them. They're sort of designed to be separate, different fuels. But for some reason, the world, like the way we eat, for some reason we've gotten stuck on the idea that all these things should be in the same meal. You know, fats, carbs, sugar, protein, everything all squished into the same meal. I don't know where that idea came from, you know. Consider this like hunter-gatherer societies. They would go to the river maybe for a couple hours, and then they would go hunt, or they would forage and maybe eating berries and apples for a few hours while hunting. And then at the very end of the day, they'd have like a feast and a meal where they'd bake up some bread and they'd eat meat or whatever. So that arc is kind of how I think it's more natural, that arc. But that hunter-gatherer societies is ancient. That's that's a long, long time ago. So how are people curing? No, I don't want to say the word cure because I think it's illegal. Not illegal to say cure, but it could be illegal to say that. How are people managing and fixing up their diabetes through high carb diets? How is this possible? So fruit is glucose and fructose primarily. And it's the system. I mean, everyone's heard of the idea of carbs and sugar being your main, what the body would prefer. It's your first fuel source. Everyone's heard that. And then protein and fats are like a secondary backup fuel source. And then when we go on the keto diet or carnivore or low carb, any kind of low carb diet, everyone's heard it's like you go into your backup system and you start burning fats as your main fuel. And it's true. That's what keto is. Ketogenesis. You start burning ketones or digesting ketones, using them as your fuel. But it's funny because everyone's heard the concept of it's your secondary backup source. It's slower and it burns slow and everything. But that's just the problem. That's the key. It is a secondary backup source in case you're in like the middle of winter in like starvation zone and all you have is like in ancient times, all you had was like some dried meat or something left, and that was it for the winter. So in those dire situations when everyone's like fasting or whatever, then you can switch to a different fuel source, high fats and protein, and you'll get through the cold month of the winter or 2 months. But it's on the backup system. You know, it's not your optimal system. So what is the optimal fuel source? The optimal fuel source for your mitochondria for your ATP. ATP is your energy that the mitochondria produce, your main energy source in the body, in your cells. The main fuel that the brain likes and needs, the main fuel that your all of your glands that produce your main hormones, the testosterone, your thyroid function, and thyroid hormones and testosterone, and your muscles. All of these systems, their preferred fuel is sugar, carbohydrates. So one of the reasons why it's been so demonized is I don't think that anyone really understands that much the problem with mixing these two fuel sources in the same meal. And I've heard that many times throughout the years too. Like, I'm like, okay, I get it, but like, how can you not mix them? So I would just be like, okay, I'll just be low carb then, because it's best, right? But why would you want to go on the really hard, really low energy backup system? Yeah, that's my preferred way to be. Yes. It doesn't make any sense. So with high carb diets, the problem with them is most people get into the situation of being like very low protein and very low oils and fats in order for the high carb thing to work. But the thing is, you don't have to be extremely low protein and extremely low fat in order for the high carb diet to work. A lot of book writers and nutritionists will say that, but the thing is, as long as your meals are primarily one or the other, you're fine. So you can have your first 2 meals and snacks, 2 or 3, like first half of the day, only sugar based, and then your second or third, fourth, fifth meal or snacks can be a little bit higher in fat, higher in protein, and then near the end of the day, highest in protein and lowest in carbs. And for a lot of years, I was doing it the opposite because all the books and all the keto stuff is always like protein first, fats first, protein first. Eat your protein, eat your high fats first, so that you don't get an insulin spike, or it's a little bit lower insulin spike. And that's been drilled into all of us for many, many years. And I think it's wrong. I think it's totally wrong. It's right if you're going to mix your sugars and your proteins and your oils all in the same meal, then maybe it might help a little bit. But yeah, just anytime you have a meal or a snack, it's got to be, you have to pick one or the other. And if you start the day, and that's another thing too, if you start the day with protein and oil, high protein, high fat, you're going to be tired all day. And if that's what you want, then go for it. A lot of people recommend that, oh yeah, just have like tons of protein, tons of fat right in the morning. Start burning ketones. But the problem is, that's cool and everything, but do you enjoy being tired all day and sluggish all day? And then, a lot of people say, well, that's just the nature of the beast, low carb, you're going to be a little bit tired. It's like, but it's just not natural. It's not your optimal, it's a very, very slow backup system. It's not natural. And the funny thing is, I was the guy for so many years, on and off, but mostly many, many years, that would be, no, sugar's just bad for you, and fat's the greatest thing in the world. It's like, yeah, saturated fat is good for you, but like, you need like a teaspoon, right? not 15, 20 teaspoons. You need literally like a teaspoon, maybe a tablespoon for the entire day. Even that's a lot less than that. Like a teaspoon. Anyway, so one of the things that happens if you're functioning on, if you have the sugar and the fat in the same meal, your body goes into what they call like a diseased state. Your liver stops producing I think it's one of the main thyroid. It's a signal for the thyroid. And so one of your main thyroid hormones stops producing when you're in this, it's called sort of like a diseased state. So your thyroid function will go way down. So this can happen when you're in keto or carnivore. So it's kind of like a low energy state. It's kind of like your body thinks it's sick, so it doesn't your thyroid won't work properly. The same thing happens when you're mixing the sugars and the fats together. It's kind of like your body thinks you're sick, but it's confused, you know. So another thing that happens when people go on higher carb diets is their thyroid function goes way through the roof and starts functioning at optimal, like amazing. And then testosterone actually goes way up too on low carb, high carb diets. So I think I'll leave it at that. If you got any good information out of this or enjoyed this at all, like and subscribe. And I will see you another time. Have a good one. Bye.